In verse 22, Ittai the Gittite answered the king, "As the Lord lives, as Yahweh lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king shall be, whether for death or life, there also will your servant be." He says, David essentially says to him in verse 19, though, you can go back. You can go back and you can stay with the king. You don't have to get involved in my exodus, leaving out of Jerusalem. So David refers to Absalom as the king, which is really interesting. David is looking to preserve himself. He's not ready to, like for him, the idea of fighting his son is not appealing to him at all. And so in verse 19, he says, you can go back to the king. Refers to Absalom as king. But then we see that Ittai replies, "As my lord the king lives." So he says, stay with the king. And Ittai says, I am staying with the king. You are the king. You are my king. I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking with the king. And then he says, wherever the king shall be, whether for death or for life, there your servant shall be. So Ittai was loyal to David when it looked like it was certainly going to cost him something. So true loyalty, it's not demonstrated when everything is great. It's often demonstrated when things are looking very, very dark. And I would say that I, and probably you, all of us, we probably have enough fair weather friends that when things are excellent and exciting and fun, when there's a lot of meals and celebrations, we have lots of friends in those times. But the real test of loyalty and true friendship is who is our friend when things are very dark, when it's likely to cost them something to be your friends. So when things are dark, real friends shine through. And so Ittai says that he's going to be with David through thick or thin, through life or death. And for those of you that are familiar with the stories of the Old Testament, this just reminds me so much of a story not of two men, but of two women, of Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. Oh, I just blanked her name, sorry. That was a trick to see if you guys were... where, in fact, it's interesting because here they're leaving Jerusalem. And he says, you don't have to come with me. You can stay back if you want. Whereas in the book of Ruth, we see that Naomi and her daughter-in-law, they're going towards Bethlehem. They're going towards Israel. And Naomi says to her daughter-in-law, it's going to be hard for you. You're going to be a foreigner. Jewish people don't really like foreigners. So you could stay back here where it's comfortable and safe for you. And then Naomi says one of just the most beautiful statements of love and devotion that we see in the Old Testament. She says, no, I'm not going to leave you. Where you live, I'm going to live. Where you die, I'm going to die. And there I'm going to be buried. Your God shall be my God, and your people shall be my people. She's like, you're not getting rid of me. And so she's ferociously clinging to her mother-in-law and saying, I'm sticking with you thick or thin. And then now here we see another Jew and another Gentile. This way going in the opposite direction, but he's saying, you know what, things can get rough. But the Gentile says to King David, I'm sticking with you, thick or thin, life or death. And so he does this when David's down. This is the lowest point in David. We see that this is, it's kind of like, this is like David's Via Dolorosa, which is a Latin phrase that means the way of shame, the way of grief. Just as much as when Jesus Christ was led out of Jerusalem. He went out of the city of Jerusalem, out the gates, out to the place of shame and abandonment. Here we see that King David is going out into a place of shame, embarrassment, and he thinks that he might not even make it through. And at that point, Ittai says, I'm with you. Ittai also did it decisively. Like, he's not wavering. He's not saying, well, King, I'll be with you for the next mile and a half, and then I'm turning around. Or I'm going to give it a week, and then we'll see how this goes. He says, nope, I am following you. He did it voluntarily as well. He exercised his volition, his will, and he says, in essence, I want to do this. Thank you for giving me a chance to opt out, David, but I'm going to do it. They say there's two different ways to motivate. There's the carrot or the stick. David is not using the stick to say, you better stick with me or you're going to be in big trouble. And he's not using the carrot either to say, it's going to be so great and fun. Please, please stay with me. No carrot, no stick. But Ittai volunteers freely.